What in the Mario Cristobal era was that?
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time for our first game reaction episode of Locked On Ducks, and I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view post, whatever that was. We're going to get into all of it. If you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch the show, which is indeed brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. They fix tired fast. With zero sugar, convenient, portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. Go to 5hourenergy.com. Use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid till September 30th on one order. Cannot be used with other promotions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. This is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And Oregon gives us the first game of the year. 9 months of hype. Highest preseason ranking since the last time they went to the national championship. Here comes a respectable but somewhat reloading Idaho team. Different quarterback, lost 7 starters. Oregon's got a bunch of returning production, highly vaunted transfer portal class. And that was the worst win of the Dan Lanning era. I'm going as far to say it was the worst performance of the Dan Lanning era. Now, you can say that because Oregon won the game, it's not the worst you have felt in the time that Dan Lanning has been a coach and Oregon has not performed the way Duck fans had hoped. But let's review the tape. Lanning has just 5 losses in his career as Oregon's coach. There was the collapse in Corvallis in 2022. That was really bad. That was really, really bad. Probably the lowest moment for me is that one. The 3 losses to Washington with some questionable 4th down calls. Yeah, those were tough. The first game against Georgia. Those all to me pale in comparison to how poorly Oregon played against Idaho tonight. That was terrible. That was terrible. The offensive line, Matthew Bedford or not, he was not playing. You still have essentially 4 returning starters from last year's unit. Until the final 2 drives of the game, they were getting bullied. They weren't getting beat. They weren't not getting a big push. They were getting bullied. Dylan Gabriel was sacked 3 times in the first half. Bo Nix was sacked 5 times all of last year. And last year, Oregon played teams like Washington twice, or USC, or Oregon State, or anyone who's better than Idaho. Now, is Idaho better than the Portland State team that came to Autzen last year when the Ducks won 81-7? Yes, 100%. And boy, Idaho looked good. Lanning in his opening statement, as any coach should, gave credit to Idaho, and they deserve some. They deserve some because that front 7 was bullying Oregon's offensive line. That was the number one takeaway. And I began the show by saying, what in the Mario Cristobal era was that? This has been one of the hallmarks of the Dan Lanning era. They've never lost to an unranked team. They tend to blow those teams out, and they play to the Oregon standard in games where they're supposed to win big. They don't play down to their opponent. They play down to their opponent. That's why this was such a bad game. This was the worst win of the Dan Lanning era, and I think the worst that his team has played for 4 quarters. Washington was the national runners-up last year, and he played them to a couple of 3-point losses. Those games might be more frustrating. They might be more infuriating because it's Washington, the stakes that were on the line. But Oregon played a much better, more competent game. If you play like that, and I don't think Oregon will, this is going to be a get the negative out podcast, and Mondays will be slightly more optimistic as I allowed myself to cool off in the car ride back from Autzen Stadium to the Central Oregon area where I'm recording this show. We'll get to that later, but there is so much negative in this game. It was horrible. That's a horrible performance. And by the way, I don't even think the defense was bad. I have almost no qualms with the defense. They gave up a trick play, which was following a conversion by Idaho because Oregon can't get a yard on an FCS team. That was pathetic. You had a throw down the field in a well-covered situation. Brandon Johnson, who was awesome today, and the guy makes a heck of a catch. 15 on Idaho. I'm sorry, I should have looked up his name ahead of time and given him credit here. You know what? I'm going to do that because he was really good, and he made a heck of a play. He made a heck of a play. And then you allowed a screen pass as well. Mark Hamper, that's the guy. Okay, Mark Hamper is a wide receiver. That dude's a ball player. I do play-by-play for FCS football. That guy's good. that guy's good. He's going to have a heck of a season, right? So he makes a heck of a catch. You give up a screen pass. Okay, that's an adjustment. The trick play, there's a trick play and whatnot. I don't have a problem with the defense. I have a problem with the offense. That was abysmal. That was abysmal. If you take out the sack numbers, Oregon still averaged less than 4 yards a carry. But why were there sack numbers? Why are we talking about how Dillon Gabriel was strip sacked and Idaho recovered the ball, by the way, towards the end of the first half? Why are we talking about that? Why? That, no, should not be allowed. Cannot be tolerated. Should not be tolerated by Oregon fans. If you're frustrated after this game, you have every right to be. If you're concerned, you have every right to be. The world has not come to a halt because Oregon was able to avoid an all-time upset in which they were a 40-plus point favorite. It would have been one of the biggest statistical upsets in the history of college football. And make no mistake about it, the starters were on the field kneeling out the game clock, which I have to let hang there for a couple of seconds because it's an astonishing thing to be able to say about Oregon's football game today. And they were out there because Oregon could have lost the game. You needed, think about this. This is bonkers. This is bonkers. And why I say this was the worst 4-quarter stretch played by Dan Lanning's Oregon team to date. It's the worst one. I cannot give you 4 quarters that were worse. Georgia was 49-3. Yeah, that's Georgia. You see what they did to the number 14 team? They dog walked them again. Clemson, 34-3. No shame, Tigers. We know how you feel. Georgia's just kind of like that. The Oregon State game. Yep, that was bad. What was that Oregon State team ranked? Oh, yeah, that's right. That was a top 15 team in college football. Top 15, top 20. This is an FCS opponent. I was talking going into this game about which backup quarterbacks would play. Would we see all 3? We didn't even get to see Dante Moore. We didn't get to see a second-string offensive lineman or another batch of wide receivers. You got to see the starters the whole game. And Dillon Gabriel threw 49 passes. 49 passes? Do you know why? Because Oregon couldn't run the ball to save their life. And the final numbers, by the way, are actually slightly misleading because when you look at the rushing numbers, Oregon only totaled 107 as a team. Gabriel was sacked 3 times and lost 23 yards. Jordan James had 15 carries for 95 yards. You might see that and think, oh, well, that's actually, that's not bad. That's pretty good. Nope. As I always say, stats are a starting point. They're not an end point. That was the worst offensive line game I have ever seen an Oregon team play. That was worse than the national championship game against Auburn in 2010. That was absolutely worse. Because again, at least then you were going up against the SEC champions. You were going up against Nick Fairley and a bunch of other big-time guys. That was Idaho. That was Idaho. Can Oregon get better? Yeah, gosh. Will they? I sure hope so. They're going to have to, or this season is going to be a Texas A&M level dud if they play like that. I hope this fires them up. I hope it ticks them off. I hope it gives them some comfortability of being in a late game pressure situation. They could have lost the game. They had a 4th and 7 up 3 with 5:40 to go. They draw Idaho off sides and then pick up a 4th and 2, and Tez Johnson, who's going to have just a monster statistical season, ends up scoring a touchdown. Like that, you needed that there was legitimate angst, fear, worry, doubt amongst fans, media members, everybody watching from afar that Oregon could have lost that game. Absolutely absurd. Absolutely absurd. It was a horrible performance. That was a horrible performance across the board. I'm not mad at the defense. I'm just talking about the offense here. There are a lot of different parties to blame, a lot of different areas to look at where Oregon has to improve, has to be better. The season is not over because Oregon did end up winning the game. They have the opportunity to make everyone forget that this ever happened or think about how crazy it is that Idaho ever pushed Oregon. but there are issues to fix. That's coming up next. First, let's fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved, ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. They have 35 different meals, more than 60 add-ons to choose from. You'll always have new flavors to explore. Make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. Head to factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50. Use code lockedoncollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code lockedoncollege50 at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Go check out Factor Meals today. And anything you need for your car, eBay Motors, they've got you covered. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They have superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors, they've just got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. It is late at night. You can hear the mild soreness of the throat. Done a lot of talking today. Got to see a bunch of you out there, walking around the stadium. Some of you came by the tailgate where I was at, and we chatted for a while. That was awesome. Love meeting you guys. That was a really, really, really fun time. It was not fun to watch Oregon struggle. I mean, struggle on offense with Idaho. The crazy part is we've seen over the course of the past 24 hours, high-profile teams and offenses come out and struggle when they shouldn't. Offenses can take longer to click. That's a silver lining if you're looking for some aspect of hope. But the issues on the offense I saw were numerous. And when you look at the box score, it's just why I always say stats are a starting point, not an end point. Oregon had 487 total yards. Idaho had 217. Idaho was 2 of 17 on third down. And Oregon had 24 points. 24 points. So, can these issues be resolved? The answer is yes. Some of them can be resolved. Some of them are question marks that cannot be answered one way or the other until we see Oregon play a stiffer level of competition. I don't know if you want to chalk up that offensive line performance to they were flat because it was Idaho, they were rusty because it was the first game, the Matthew Bedford injury threw a wrinkle into the offensive line, and the timing wasn't there with Charlie Pickard at center, and there were no snap issues, by the way, so shout out to Charlie, because Oregon fans have had some troublesome moments, just the one really, or several moments over the course of that game, with bad snaps with a backup center. Charlie Pickard looked fine, but that offensive line looked horrible. I mean horrible. And by the way, Will Stein bears some of the brunt of the responsibility here as well. I'd be willing to bet I have not done a Pro Football Focus grade every single offensive lineman snap and who, is doing well and who's not doing well and who's getting beat. At some point, there needed to be a schematic adjustment, and that never showed up. However, the scheme can only do so much. Like eventually in the second half, they went to the toss play and had a little bit more success with that. Why did it take so long? I don't know. Maybe he didn't feel like he was going to need to introduce that element of the run game, but eventually they did. And that started to work a little bit. But then you saw what the real problem was. It was less Will Stein, who, again, I didn't think was, in his bag and doing amazingly and had the offense ready to go. Clearly, they were not entirely ready to go. But I don't think that was the root of the problem. The root of the problem was the offensive line couldn't block Idaho. They couldn't move them around. They couldn't protect consistently. Dylan Gabriel being sacked 3 times against Idaho is bonkers. That's bonkers. And he was under pressure several more times. Now, he was still able to get off 49 passes, and he completed 41 of them for 380 yards and 2 touchdowns, both of them to Tez Johnson. And, earlier on a show this week, I talked about how Tez Johnson could have the best Oregon receiver season ever. Well, he's off to a good start. Only 81 yards receiving because there was a lot of dink and dunk, but 12 catches and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, he's well on his way if that trend continues. But the offensive line has to fix itself. The penalties, that can be cleaned up. Okay, we saw that with Oregon last year. Remember, week 2 against Texas Tech. Here's another silver lining, note of optimism here. Week 2 against Texas Tech, Oregon goes down to Lubbock, could have lost the game. Camden Lewis misses a 28-yard field goal, which we all know he's capable of. If he misses that field goal late in the game, Oregon loses. Instead, Texas Tech driving, doorless pressure, Bossa, pick 6, silver wings, hallelujah, everything's good and dandy. Oregon could have lost that game. That was not a great Texas Tech team. They weren't bad, but they ended the year 7-6. If Tyler Shuck had stayed healthy, maybe they end up going, something a game or two better. But they were a 6-6 team in a pretty average, from a depth standpoint, Big 12. If Oregon late in the year goes to Lubbock and plays them, you think that game is a 38-30, sweating it out, hard as racing, could easily lose the football game? I don't think so. And penalties were a big issue in that game. The offensive line had a couple penalties. The secondary had a couple of penalties in that game. It got cleaned up, so that can be corrected. Johnny Cornelius played the worst half of football I think he will ever play as an Oregon Duck. I do not see him playing worse. He's an NFL caliber guy, and in the first half, he straight up stunk. He's not the only guy. That entire offensive line deserves a ton of blame because they were horrible. It is embarrassing for you to be that veteran and that hyped of an offensive line and go out there and get pushed around by Idaho. That's embarrassing. And Johnny Cornelius in the first half twice negated positive plays with an illegal formation because he lined up off the line. And I don't think it was a bad call from the official, because I looked down on the field from the press box and Lanning was yelling at Johnny. He was not yelling at the official. And then he allows the blindside strip sack on Dylan Gabriel that leads to a fumble at the end of the half and prevents Oregon from maybe going down and getting points before the half and making it a 3-possession lead, and maybe things would be different. But you go into the halftime and Oregon is not playing well. And you're like, well, this isn't what it's supposed to be. Oregon's getting the ball to come out of the half, though. They should come out pretty fired up. 3 and out? Why? Because the offensive line had no movement at the point of attack. Maybe Idaho has constructed the greatest FCS defensive line we have ever seen. It shouldn't matter. The best FCS defensive line you can find, compared to what Oregon has on the offensive line, compared to what they're trying to accomplish as in a football team this year, shouldn't matter. Should not matter. You think it matters when a team plays Georgia? You think it matters when a team plays Ohio State? I saw Furman, an FCS team. Granted, I don't know if Furman's any good. They played Ole Miss. They lost 76-0. That's what this game was supposed to look like. My score prediction was coincidentally, well, we did not plan this out, with Jared Mack of the Odds and Audibles podcast and 24/7. We both predicted 66-10. Boy, aren't we sharp? We're a sharp pair, Jared and myself and everybody else. You know why the predictions were there? Because that's where it should have been. And it wasn't there. And it came down to the offensive line. So they have to clean up the penalties, number 1. Actually, no, I changed my mind. That's number 2. Number 1, you need to remember that you are a good unit and you need to find a dog. You need to find a dog inside of each one of those guys and figure out how you're going to go through this season, how you're going to play defensive lines far superior to what you played on Saturday night and push guys around. Because that was pathetic. That was pathetic. They're better than that. I've seen them be better than that. I know they're better than that. They know that they are better than that. But they didn't play like it on Saturday. And for any Oregon fan frustrated, you got every right to be. You got every right to be. There's a bunch of hype around this team in the preseason. I've certainly contributed to that. My record prediction was Oregon to go 12-0. Doesn't feel great right now. We'll see if I back off of that on a game-by-game basis, because certainly I don't feel fantastic about it after watching Oregon play like a team that's fighting for bowl eligibility this year. I mean, Colorado struggled with North Dakota State. Now, they were actually the better team in that game, and there was a fluky play and whatnot, but they could have lost to North Dakota State. Oregon could have lost to Idaho. Colorado fighting to make a bowl game. They could get there. That's not where Oregon was supposed to be. And that's what was so disappointing, is this was supposed to be, on an overall favorable schedule, a game that didn't cause you major problems. And instead, there were legitimate headaches, and the starters had to play the entire game. Can it be corrected? Yeah, but those two things have to happen. You got to find a way as a unit to dramatically increase on the offensive line, dramatically increase your productivity and ability to move guys around, number one. And number two, clean up the penalties. You had 4 pre-snap penalties by 3 different guys. Can't happen. Cannot happen. It was inexcusably bad. It does not mean it'll be that way all season, but it certainly was on Saturday, and it almost led to the most embarrassing loss in the history of Oregon football. But it didn't. So Oregon's 1-0. Were there any good things about this game? Anything at all? I mean, yeah, technically. Oregon won, technically. I'll give you a positive thing, but I have something that I find to be mildly amusing, but not amusing. You'll just have to stick around because that's coming up next. Are you tired after lunch? You're not alone. Studies show that over 70% of us hit the wall after lunch, and you should let a 5-hour energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it, which is what Oregon's running backs were doing all game long, just crashing into a wall because there were no holes to run through. Well, 5-hour energy could be what the Oregon offensive line needs to give them that boost to move guys out of the way. So they've got 0 sugar, convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore, like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There's a flavor for everyone, so try them all. You can get your own 12-pack. You can get your own 24-pack. Whatever you're looking for, 5-Hour Energy has got it, and it's delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product today, you can use my code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid till September 30th on one order, cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Before I get to a couple of good things in this game, Dan Lanning was asked about what he told his team in the locker room after the game, and he didn't only give a non-answer. He wouldn't say what he said. He said, "Oh, that's between the guys over there in the locker room," which I find to be amusing but refreshing at the same time, because that's coach speak for, I tore them a new one and they deserved it, and they need to take the message to heart and put that on the field next week. Because guess what? Boise State's defense may have been garbaggio against Georgia Southern today. It was. Their offense hung a 56-piece on Georgia Southern. Well, that's not a great opponent. Well, they might beat Idaho. At the very least, they're on the same level. Georgia Southern's an FBS team, by the way. I believe they play in the good old Sun Belt, or Fun Belt if you prefer. But Boise State, they're not going to play around. They're not going to play. A friend I was with after the game, we were laughing about how poorly Oregon played. And just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that game played out the way. I can't believe a lot of things about it. And he goes, well, at least next week we're playing Boise State and we own those guys. Which, point taken. Because that was not a good performance across the board. So offensive line's got to be better. Dylan Gabriel, I think I'll share more thoughts on Monday's show, but quick snapshot, 41 of 49. Oregon having to go to the air raid against Idaho, not great. 41 of 49, that's what Dylan Gabriel is. I mean, I thought Gabriel looked good for the most part. Now, sitting up in the press box, there were a couple of touchdown throws that he missed. Not that he threw the ball inaccurately, he made the wrong reads. Before the field goal from Atticus Sappington to give Oregon a comforting 2-possession lead, he wanted to go to T-Ferg. He went to him. He picked up 5-6 yards or whatever. It was cover 0. At least that's what I saw in the snapshot, and I haven't seen all 22 film replay. But Evan Stewart was wide open over the middle for a touchdown, and then he tried to get the ball to Terrence Ferguson on the 3rd and 7 before the 4th and 7 that led to the 4th and 2 and the Tez Johnson touchdown. And he had Kenyon Sadiq breaking open in the back of the end zone. And then there was a deep shot to Tez Johnson he could have taken, but he checked it down instead. So those are three. Now, those are 3 plays. Quarterback's not going to be perfect. Dylan Gabriel is not the reason Oregon won this game. You got to be more explosive in the passing game going forward. You know, Bo Nix was captain check down and whatnot. Dylan Gabriel certainly took that role to heart a little bit too much at times. But Bo Nix could, contrary to some people's belief a year ago, push the ball down the field pretty regularly and do so successfully and when he needed to. Oregon did not have an offensive play of over 30 yards. I think their longest play was like 25 yards. Not great. Not great. That's got to change. I didn't think Gabriel was the problem. I didn't think Gabriel was as good as he's capable of being. So I'll talk more about that on Monday. But I'll end on a positive note here. See, Spencer, the perennial optimist. Brandon Johnson's the man. Whoo, boy, that guy can play. A 4th down pass breakup, an interception in the end zone, and a couple of tackles. He's good. He's good. How about that Nico Reed interception to end the game? That was some Cirque du Soleil work to catch that ball and contort his body like that. But I don't have qualms about Oregon's defense. I really don't. I know the drive that Idaho had where they went down the field. They got the big play on the screen pass. Oregon gave up 3 big plays in this game, and that was it. Idaho had 217 yards. They had 14 points. They were 2 of 12 on 3rd down, and they threw 2 interceptions, and Oregon had 4 sacks. Mateo Uiagalelei had 2 of them. That's what the numbers should have been. That's what you want it to look like. My score prediction was 10 points. They didn't get the hold in the red zone one of the times, and it's 14. Like, not that big a deal. Problems in this game are on the offensive side of the ball. I thought the defensive line was good. If you don't believe me, the running numbers are as follows for the Vandals. 20 carries for 49 yards. He was sacked 4 times. Their quarterbacks combined to go 11 of 27 for 168 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. And that touchdown, by the way, came because of a trick play that it got beat. Not gonna argue with you there, but I can live with a week 1 defense not defending a halfback screen well, or they defend the receiver screens well, but not the halfback screens. Not defending a halfback screen well and getting beat on a trick play. I can live with those things in week 1. That's getting back into the fold. That's ironing out the kinks. But why was Idaho in position to call that trick play for a touchdown? Because Oregon couldn't pick up a yard. Moving the sticks was a struggle. It was not good. So that's the silver lining on the positive angle is, like, if you just look ahead to the Boise State matchup here, Boise State's offense was amazing. Oregon's defense looked really good. I thought Oregon's defense looked really good. They held Idaho without a single point in the first half, and they didn't get any help from the offense sustaining drives or putting Idaho in bad field position and whatnot. The defensive line looked good. The secondary made some plays. Yeah, I thought the defense was good. Brandon Johnson, defensive player of the game, easily. Mateo would be up there as well with the 2 sacks. But I thought Tatum Tuioti was disruptive. Jordan Birch had a nice game. Jamari Caldwell, DJ Harmon, I saw moments where they were disrupting the play, causing havoc in the pocket. Like, that side of the line of scrimmage looked really good. This entire game came down to Oregon's offensive line and their blatant inability to run the football. So defense, good. Good showing. Not perfect. Things to clean up. Offense, complete work in progress going into next week. Unless they figure out the offensive line. If you do that, then I think you're in good shape. So there's one reaction show in the books. The first of many. Talk to you all again on Monday. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.